Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. I'm not even, I'm over the moon excited today. I'm more like hysterical. And that's so unusual for me. Now, focusing is always a problem. Today is probably worse, again, because of my entire excitement about our guest. Now, our guest is a high school girlfriend, okay? And a remarkable high school girlfriend, but actually Pamela, her name is Pamela Nelson-Munson. And Pamela, I think we actually met in like 8th grade. I think I remember you at Gene Edwards' pool parties. And later on, you would tell me that I had been making out with Conrad Imhouse. And you were amazed to find out that I was really a very lovely young woman, even though my behavior spoke to another part of me. So anyway, our guest today is Pamela Nelson-Munson. Hello, Pamela.
Hello, Denise, or Dee.
Yes. Boy, that goes back. See, that's when you're an old friend. And people every once in a while, I've been married to Kenny for years, and somebody came from 7th and 8th grade, and probably Nancy or Carol, and they called me Dee, and he said, "Who's Dee?" I said, "It's a long story." Okay. Kind of my alter ego but when people call me that, it's so loving, Pam. Do you know what I mean? There's so much love involved in it because we go back such a long way. All right. So not to keep people in suspense any longer. I know people are just hanging on our words. Pam and I were able to reconnect because of high school reunions and Facebook, like so many people in our society today. Now, we hadn't talked in a really long time.
Right.
And what I didn't know about Pam, I knew she was a reverend, a pastor, that she'd gone to school, that she was a pastor. She ran churches, for God's sake. She did sermons. But what I didn't know was that she had found cooking and loved cooking. So a whole lot has transpired, and we're going to start at the beginning, but the intersect, what I originally said to Pam, and this is why I love you. I had sent Pam an email and I said, I think one of the biggest problems I would see, problems, and I mean problems, meaning the angst of women our ages, they have no way to forgive themselves, okay? There's no forgiveness. So I said to her, as a pastor of 40 years, I said, come on my podcast and talk about forgiveness. And she texted back that not my strong suit. It's basically what you said. But then coming up with her own idea, which was so much better, she said, you know what, Denise, I'd like to talk about the intersection of my cooking, okay, and my ministry. And since, Pam, so many, I would think half the people that listen to us used to cook professionally. Okay, that's just because that's who my network was. That's who my network is. That's who bought my books. That's who I bought their books. So when you said it, I knew it would be perfect. But here's so we'll get there. And this is probably going to be a 2-part podcast, so people know. So you'll listen. Cindy will first broadcast part 1, and then we will broadcast part 2. But I have to tell you something, Pam. This is the best thing in the whole world. And I'm going to make this an exercise for anyone that wants to be included in Women Beyond a Certain Age.
Okay.
Pamela sent me, I said, so I'm going to ask her some questions. Pamela sent me a 6-page timeline. Okay. It's fantastic. I've read it 3 times like a novel. And it came, and so we're going to start with your timeline a little bit, darling, and then you're going to talk. I'm just talking a lot at the moment because I have to lay some groundwork as to how long we've been friends. Do you know what I mean? And how, and I think, again, that's so valuable as we age. It's just, because do we change that much? I don't know. Do we?
Well, we not only did we share a time period, we shared a space period. Yes. And that's so important. I mean, we go, you say Benny Bufano statue, we're there. We know exactly what that is. So, yeah.
We say Gene Edwards pool, and we are there.
That's right. And I have to say, the reason I sent you that was that like most of your, I mean, unlike most of your guests, I don't have a book that you can read. So I wanted to contextualize a little bit.
I love it. And I'll tell you what else that I'm really going to make that I said to Cindy, she and I will talk about it. There's several questions and we'll get there that like subtopics that you put there. And I thought to myself, every woman should ask herself these questions. Okay. And if they wrote them down,
yeah,
sometimes you find out things about yourself, but we know that as writing. Now, here's what I need to share with people. You were born in San Francisco. So was I.
Okay.
In 1951. Yes. And they've been working on the San Francisco airport ever since, as we know. Now, your parents brought you home to Kentfield.
Yes.
My father had a grocery store in Kentfield in that little tiny shopping center, the Jolly Market that was next door to Tweeds and Weeds and Zims. What are the odds of that?
Wow.
I know. Your mother probably shopped there, honestly.
Yes. Well, and my father was a butcher too. He started out as a butcher, so he probably went there.
My father was a butcher, and he bought And your father was in the Army Air Corps, and so was mine.
Yes.
This is crazy. I mean, really, the more I read it, I thought, oh my God, we could have been twins separated at birth.
That's right.
Of course, we also, which is very much our generation, we come from real immigrant stock.
Yes.
I mean, real immigrants, which changes. I think it's the biggest cultural change I see. You know what I mean, Pam? So when I see young people, and young people don't know that, so why shouldn't, so they don't have to know it.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I mean, you talk about your grandmother who smoked and drank a Manhattan every day. My grandfather was drinking bourbon in his coffee for breakfast, a Manhattan before dinner, and red wine after dinner, and he lived to be 89 years old.
Well, and my Swedish grandfather, his breakfast was sherry with a raw egg in it. So there you go.
And your father lived to be 100.
Almost 102. I know.
Extraordinary. I mean, this is just, it's so different. The world has changed so much. Yeah. I like the world I'm seeing now. I don't love the problem we have with guns, but I look out and I think to myself, things have gotten better. It's just, it's all shown us in a different way. Do you know what I mean? It's presented in a different way. Yeah. All right. Now, you come from 3 girls.
Yes. You do too.
I do too. Now, and then this is one of my favorite things that Christmas meant. And again, this is all this stuff. I'm saying this stuff because it's the yarn that we're knit out of, as I think of. Christmas meant City of Paris, Macy's front windows, the Emporium rooftop rink with Santa, and Blums for a treat. Now, Pamela, I'm in Union Square a couple of times a year because my mother bought a timeshare there 40 years ago when it was built. So that I got the timeshare. Of course, I had to buy it for my sisters because we wouldn't give each other a nickel. We are very generous, but not when it comes to the money. So I bought it from my mother's estate. And so I have 7 days a year that I can, stay in Union Square. And I still miss the City of Paris, and I still miss Blums.
Oh, yes.
How can that be 50, 60 years later?
I still remember, the pink. It's just, beautiful.
Beautiful. And it was one of the happiest times in my life as a child. And you did this again culturally. You said in all your doctor's appointment, we went to the 450 Sutter building, which was where our dentist was.
Yes.
Still in San Francisco, one of the most beautiful Art Deco buildings ever.
Wow.
And, yes. And so after we would get our dental appointments, then my mother would let us go to Blums and eat caramel cake or one of those desserts that just stuck in between your molars. But that was, you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I know. So that's, I can't just stress enough how similar our backgrounds are. And then I have to say one more thing, and then we're going to talk about you going to Peru and traveling as a child. That comes out a lot in your food. My Pamela wrote, and I'm not saying this in any way to disparage her older sister, but her older sister became a hippie at UC Berkeley and ended up in a commune in the Haight,
Yes.
married to a Messiah. My sister went to UC Berkeley, dropped out, and married a motorcycle monster, okay, who later went on to not greater heights at all, but who in fact was quite a mess. Okay, I don't know how to say it, but he had his penis removed.
Oh no!
Yes, and became a woman.
Oh no!
That did not fit into my mother's story of the three beautiful girls. Okay, so when your father was afraid for you to go to college,
right?
I understand his fear. There some bad juju had gone on. Oh God! So, and I know this, Pam. And I had to. Didn't you learn from that with your sister? What did you learn from your sister marrying someone not acceptable to your parents?
Oh, well, that I had to be the good one. I had to be the savior. I had to, I had to do what my father dreamed, because son of an immigrant, he says, you always expect your children to do better than you did. And so he did better than his father. And so then my sister goes this other path. So it was like, okay, I've got this responsibility on my shoulders. I'm going to college. I don't know why I'm going to college or what I'm going to do, but by God, I'm going to go.
Well said. I knew this. I wasn't going to marry anyone that my parents didn't like.
Right.
And of course, I just wasn't going to marry anyone that we couldn't have a wedding at the Elks Club, if you get
yes.
So yes, and our parents' dreams, doing what I don't know if young people do that as much anymore, but I certainly know. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. You raised independent thinkers.
Very.
My two nieces, when I say that, my two nieces definitely have found their own paths, and I'm glad. My sister's children have definitely, and they're really productive, beautiful, happy, women. So that's what we're looking at. All right. So we're going to start with this. Okay. How did you go to Ecuador in 7th grade?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was brief. 8 months we lived in Mill Valley, and I hated it. I hated school. I hated everything about it. We walk home with a group of friends, and all of a sudden this other girl shows up. She's from Ecuador, and she's there for 3 months to go to school. And on the last day walking home, she says, well, my father says that I can invite someone to Ecuador for your summer. And I in this group of 8 people, I raised my hand. I said, that would be me. My father did PR for SFO helicopters, so we had reciprocal arrangements. So it wasn't, a big, I knew I could fly there. That wasn't a big problem. My age, I would just turn 13, but it was like, okay, I'd gone to Girl Scout camp. I can do Ecuador.
And did you speak Spanish?
I just, 7th grade Spanish. That was it.
Yes.
Yeah.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
Pardon?
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
That's right. So I went over there not knowing anyone except this girl, and absolutely loved it. Yeah.
And tell us about the food.
The food actually was, Ecuadorian food is pretty innocuous. It's not like spicy or anything, but they've got wonderful fruits and vegetables. The papayas, I had never seen at that point a papaya that was as big as a watermelon. And they have like 200 varieties of mango. Being from California, I had tasted the more exotic things that New York kids hadn't tasted, like avocados and artichokes. But the one thing that I mentioned that was very unusual, but I say, hey, why not, was what the Indians call cuy, which is guinea pig. And they roast it whole on a spit. And it's like, I eat rabbit, why not this? So.
Spoken like a child that was going to turn out to be a gourmet and then a chef. When I went to Peru, I was in Peru a couple of times. I was lucky because when I taught on Holland America, Guido was a big port. Do you know what I mean? So we'd come through Central America and the Panama Canal and then hit Guido. So I was able to go to, the famous ruins that now the name escapes me.
Like famous. Machu Picchu?
Yes, Machu Picchu.
Okay.
And all the way out to Machu Picchu were the guinea pigs on the sticks.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay. And they smelled delicious.
Yes.
And of course, the people I was with said, "Oh, we have to get one." They said, "Okay." And I took the tiniest bite and it just tasted like guinea pig on a stick. I mean,
very fatty, a lot of fat. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't good. You know what I mean? I didn't say I want more, but it certainly to me was a very efficient food source that people could, and they must reproduce like crazy. And then like Italians, and then they could put them on a stick and sell them on the curb for a couple of bucks. How smart is that? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I should have even taken a bigger bite, but I was really, to be honest with you, I guess I was, of course, all I could visually think about is my sister's guinea pig from when we were children, that my mother hated more than anything and said, "This thing smells, it stinks, it bites me, I hate it." And we gave it to, remember that wonderful children's museum in Boyd Park? It was, and they had guinea pigs and rabbits. So we gave it to that museum and went to visit it for several years, and he was still alive, which I think was a blessing for him, because I think my sister would have left that thing out in the backyard my mother would have put it out in the backyard with dogs. Now, so you also go on to say, I love that you put your hand up and said to the girl, "Sure, I'm in, let me go to Ecuador." One of the other things that you and I have in common, Pam, is that you wrote that you weren't particularly a good student in school. See, if I liked the class, I got an A. If I wasn't interested, I barely, and of course, as I got more clever, like nurses' excuses, or I fell down on the playground or whatever, I didn't go to classes. Sometimes early on, I would say, "Oh, I couldn't make it," or my car ran out of gas. In my high school, I'd say, "Oh my God, I went out and then my car wouldn't start." I mean, I lied all the time. I didn't care for school either. People will never know that we just had a big old glitch, Pam, that I have to tell them, because I think the story of Zoom, I think it's the analogy for life is you have to keep trying. Now,
I know we were talking about not being good in school.
That's exactly right. Now, I was shocked to read that you wrote that. I knew I wasn't good in school. I was about you.
Like you, I loved the things I loved. I hated the things I hated. I loved my journalism and newspaper. And I actually just decided to take a 2-week hiatus from PE because I did not like PE. And then Miss Arvello said, "I'm going to flunk you." So I said, "Okay, I won't go to journalism for 2 weeks. Does that count?"
Honey, it's, when I look back, first of all, you were the editor of the yearbook, the newspaper. I wrote a little column in my senior year I think it was about this. I mean, it was very heavy. It was about being a song leader. No, I think I was like a sports journalist talking about this.
That's
anyway,
right.
Now, when you say stuff like that, Pam, though, this is the part, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. Jeff Godwin was around a lot in the newspaper, a lot too. And I didn't really know Jeff Godwin. He's a very nice man. I've seen him at 1 or 2 reunions. But everybody knew he was like the smartest guy in the school.
Absolutely.
Remember that? I mean, absolutely. He was the smartest guy in class.
Yes.
So he said to me one day when we were working on the newspaper, and he came in, he said, "Yeah, well, you use really too much, the word really too much. You're not a very good writer." And I remember thinking, he has a point. Now, I wasn't taking offense because you know what I mean? Because I was probably written 6 words and it said really, really, really good. And then I'd left to go with my pom-poms and gone somewhere. But anyway, I'm just saying, I do know this. And the other thing is, you said you flunked algebra 3 times and did not pass geometry. Now, I didn't know. I had the same problem. And to this day, I thought I wasn't. So for years, I didn't think I was good in math.
Yes.
And then when I started to run a kitchen and they showed me how the percentages of food cost was tied into my bonus, guess what? I did math.
You know, I loved food costing. Loved it.
See? And yet algebra escaped us. And it just goes to show you, one of my favorite lines is that movie, and when it's the, oh crap, it's the beautiful, Catherine Turner goes back to high school, and then she says to somebody in the class, she's in geometry, you're never going to use this the rest of your life, because that's what I have felt.
That's right.
I wish I couldn't do it now, but you did well. And then you did go off to college.
I did. I think it was because of my Spanish that I aced the ACT. And so even though I did good on the verbal, on the SATs.
Yes.
But I still think, I mean, they accepted me like really late. It was like they're looking around, anybody else applying before we say yes to this person?
That's okay. Good for you. Now, when did all of a sudden, so did you meet your husband, Brian, and then just think, oh, I could be a reverend too? Or had you already thought, I'm gonna study theology? How did that work?
No, Brian he was kind of like the impetus to a thought that was already there. I was already involved in chapel stuff in college. I had been in high school, and it was, like I said, it was a field that I could do so many of my passions in. I mean, all of my passions I could do in ministry. And so, but there weren't, I looked around, I didn't see any women pastors, but I was also raised in Marin that says, do what you can do, whatever you want to do. And so I didn't see any roadblocks.
What are the things that you knew you could do in your ministry that you loved?
I could be with people. I could create. I could write. I could talk in front of people. I love talking in front of people. I could be spiritual. I could put programs together. I could put people together. I could do drama, everything. Yeah, I could use the church kitchen,
That's fantastic that you saw that and had that vision. Do you know what I mean? I think that's very impressive, to say the least. So you went to the San Francisco Theological Seminary in San Anselmo. And for those of you that are listening to it, it's one of the most beautiful old buildings and places. I mean, I drove by it. I lived in San Anselmo for a while when I lived in Fairfax for a while. I mean, it's a landmark in Marin County. Yes. It's so beautiful.
It's like a castle.
Yes, it is. That's exactly right. And what happened when you were getting ready to graduate from there?
Well, you mean I'd had my first child, so I'm in third year. It's a 3-year program. I was in my third year. I had a baby, and I was due to be ordained after I graduated. And this church official who didn't even know me stopped the whole process, saying that he who never met me didn't think I could handle motherhood and ministry at the same time.
See, and that was 1980.
Yes.
That's only 44 years ago. See, this is the part, when we're looking for society to change or cultural changes, I say to people all the time, honey, it doesn't move that fast. If you, in our lifetime, that someone stopped you from being ordained, from whatever, he didn't know you.
No.
You know what I mean? This is on bad days, Pam, in my marriage, not meaning in the marriage, but when bad days in our culture, I always turn to Kenny and I say to him, I am so tired of the white man's boot on my neck. He always says to me, what boot? Nobody, no white guy ever supposed to put his boot on your neck. I said, you are wrong, man.
Yeah.
You are wrong. No, Pam, that's enormous story.
Oh,
In
yeah.
1980. I mean, that's enormous.
Yeah.
So what happened? You just said, forget it. I can do it anyway?
We talked with the bishop, and even though it wasn't when we went to a church, so they couldn't give me a church because I wasn't ordained, but they offered my husband a church, and I said, okay, but can we have the church consider us as a clergy couple? And so that's what we did. And after 2 years, I was ordained. So it took a while.
Yeah, so smart. And what did Brian think during that time? I'm just curious. Did he say something like, just be patient, or
Oh, no. Oh,
no.
He was as angry as I was.
Oh, good.
I mean, yeah. We both are rebels in our own right. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. So it's just amazing to me. And yet, no, because the same thing, when I went to the Culinary Academy in 1984,
okay,
there were like 3 women in my class.
Oh,
There
wow.
had started out at 5. One dropped out immediately. She was the first person she was such a wonderful woman. I met her and she said, I'm Katie, I'm a lesbian. Now I have to tell you, I went, oh, I didn't know what to say, because I'd known lesbians, but they never told me that.
Yeah.
So here I was saying, how do you do? And
wait, let me trace that.
Yeah. And so the thing that was amazing was she had worked in kitchens. When I look back, lots of kitchens, she'd run kitchens, but she thought she needed the degree, like we all did, like people did. And then she said to me one day, she said goodbye. She was saying goodbye. She said, I'm not coming back next semester. I'd become very fond of her because she was so funny and so direct and so honest. And she said, you know what, Denise? I don't need these French dicks to tell me how to cook. And I remember when she said it, I thought, well, that's a very valid point, Katie. And that was it. And she disappeared. I don't know whatever happened to her. I hope she's had a fabulous life.
Oh.
But at the moment, I understood it more the longer I stayed in school.
Yes,
what the comment was, because I was with just kind of having blinders on. But I do know that, when I graduated, by the time I graduated from the Culinary Academy, I was so angry and so tired of the bullshit that I couldn't stand it. Do you know what I mean? But that's okay, because that propelled me. I worked in a restaurant or 2, but I thought to myself, the only way I'm going to ever make any money, accomplish what I want to do, is if I own my own place. And I didn't know what that looked like.
Wow.
But I thought I didn't want to run a restaurant, but I thought I can open my own catering company. I can write cookbooks. I can do what I need to do, but I'm going to have to do it myself, because these guys are not going to make room for us. And that was what was very obvious to me. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That they were not. And I don't know how much today, now, of course, everyone, it cracks me up, talks about toxic restaurant. And I no, it has to change. I'm not saying it should. But toxic, it was just the way it was. It didn't even dawn on me. I mean, the guy, I got pinched so many times in kitchens that I was black and blue.
Oh my gosh.
And you know what? You just learn to say, I learned to say when I worked on the cruise ship, I didn't even mean to. This was my finest moment. I was being harassed. They'd never had a woman work in the kitchen. And every guy was harassing me all day long. And one of them, who was the worst, came up to pinch me, and I'd been chopping, so my knife went in the air, not flew, but I cut him, just a little slice on his hand that was there, but it was bleeding. And I said, stay away from me. Well, no one bothered me after that. I think they thought I did it on purpose. I did not.
Gosh. Yeah.
Now,
next time it goes lower. Yeah.
In my dreams, but they left me alone. But I was by this time, it's 85, 86. I knew that I was going to have to do my own thing if I was going to have any success at it. So now then you went on to have 2 more children.
I did. Yeah. We spaced them apart. So they're like 5 years apart. So it gave us time to, bond and all of that before. Actually, what I say is that we get one into kindergarten. We say, well, that wasn't so bad. Let's do it.
So smart. No, you can't remember. Yeah, you have to forget some things. I say that all the time. I love that, Pam. How brilliant you are. Now, but by all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but I have to ask you about this. You wrote that your daughter in 1998 graduates from high school.
Yeah.
And you quit my day. I quit my day job.
You did. I had been in the ministry 17 years.
Wow.
And I had, it's the work ethic. You work really, really hard. And I used to say that the church is being a pastor in a church is kind of like being a call girl, because, or maybe not a call girl, but a mistress, because you're like always expected to be there and be on, whether or not they show up or not. So it was like you are the employee of all these hundreds of people.
Hundreds of people.
Yeah, they have a claim on your life. And so sometimes it's shadow boxing, where do I go? Where do I turn? And I was just tired. And I'd always wanted to go to cooking school. Before high school, I said, I would watch Julia Child, of course, like everybody else. And I told my dad that, and he goes, oh, well, you should go to the Cordon Bleu when you're older. And looking back, it's like, oh my gosh, right. All that stuff that was happening across the bay and in Berkeley with, is just that I didn't take advantage of it is hard. But I wanted to follow that passion. There was a cooking school right there, and I had taken some courses, and I thought, I'm going to commit. I had a little quote by Anais Nin, and I don't have it right on the tip of my tongue, but it was like, sometimes you just have to say yes to the unknown.
Yes.
And I worked through The Artist's Way, the book, and I thought, yep, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm sorry, family, but we're all going to have to buck up. It actually worked out well, because for my daughter's, whatever they call that, FAFSA, that just a parent being unemployed doesn't do anything. But if a parent is in school, it gets extra points. So it actually worked in her favor. But we were still very hand to mouth.
Honey, and this is part of, now I'm going to tell you, I love it too much, because I went to cooking school after I had been making in Marin, selling real estate for my dad's brokerage. I made anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 in 19.
My gosh.
I know. I mean, money.
Oh my gosh.
It's real money. Now, unbeknownst to me, and I've done this several times in my life, I said, I'm going to cooking school. I got to cooking school driving my shiny BMW, carrying my Louis Vuitton bag. And the smartest guy in our class there, Peter Jackson, who sometimes listens, so I want to say his name, he was so talented. He still is. Blah, blah, blah. But he said to me one night when we were all having a beer, like 10 of us after school, he said, so how are you going to justify making $8 an hour?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When you get out of school, so you won't even make $100 a day, and
right.
And they don't pay overtime. So how are you going to live on that? Now I need you to know the bad news. I remember thinking, how much do they make? Because it had never dawned on me to check on.
I know.
It didn't dawn on me. Now, I broke? It was the best time in my life, because I learned how to turn a nickel over 15 different ways and figure something out.
Yes.
But yes, it wasn't the smartest move financially I ever made.
No.
And you know what? It didn't matter. And I was broke for, I think it probably, I figured it out one day. I was sadly figuring it out. I think it took me almost 8 or 9 years, Pamela, to reimburse myself.
Wow.
For just tuition, let alone
and
living expenses, let alone for the income I lost. But you know what? water under the bridge. I had to do it. I felt like I had to do it. I didn't want to sell real estate for that's not how I saw my life. Do you know what I mean? I didn't see that in the long term, whereas I saw working with food for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have a choice.
It also gave me a huge appreciation for people who make minimum wage.
Yeah.
That they work harder probably than the rest of us and make minimum wage.
That's right.
Yeah.
It gave me an appreciation for immigrants to this that I had never had, because I didn't know it. You know, I mean, I didn't know immigrants. I mean, in Marin County I didn't know immigrants.
Yeah.
Really. Gunther Hagel did all my mother's house cleaning. Remember that cleaning service, Gunther Hagel? They wore uniforms. He had a fancy van. My mother's gardener was Japanese, this beautiful, brilliant designer. So he would not, you know what I mean? I mean, I looked around, I didn't know any immigrants, but I really didn't. Talk about living in a bubble. My grandfather was an immigrant. But when I got to working in kitchens, I realized the whole backbone of the kitchen industry was built on people that come here, whether they be from Thailand or Mexico or Central America, wherever there's a war, people came into the United States, and the easiest thing they could do was get a job in a restaurant, because they could cook. I mean, they could wash dishes and stuff. So yeah, I huge appreciation for that.
Yes.
Now, Mao, my darling, I want to stop right here. So then we're going to come back for part 2 and talk about your dream of going to cooking school and how you made that happen.
Okay.
I have to tell you one thing when you said that about being a minister. And yes, you've got 1 million people depending on you. Do you know what I mean? And it's, you know, my first paying job in cooking school, Pamela, I got a job at a rectory in San Francisco.
Wow.
Okay. Saint Veronica's Rectory. The priest had a house, and I was the cook for the priest. Now, the nuns, by the way, did not have a cook. This is because one of the nuns said to me, yeah, I wish you'd come and cook dinner for us. And she was this, and I remember, and I said to Father Quinn, how come?
Yeah.
How come they don't have a cook? He said, what do you mean? Get to retire. They're teachers. They get to retire. I don't get out of this job until I drop dead in the confessional. And his voice was raised, and he turned red, and I thought, got a few anger issues there, Father Quinn. But I loved him because I learned, and this was my favorite line, and then we're going to break and come back and talk about your cooking career, because it's so entwined, and the things you wrote was so brilliant. Father Quinn, I said to him, I'd say, how are you? How was your day? How is it every day, Denise? The McCarthys need a new roof. The Finnegans are sleeping with other people. And then he would just go on, because it was a very Catholic Irish thing. He says, what do you think? Too much booze. None of us say their prayers. It's the same crap every day. Now, I have to tell you, I was astounded. He was the funniest. He was a dry alcoholic. He was the funniest man in the whole world. And I loved him. And he taught me so much about life by saying stuff like that. And I used to say to him, did you miss me? Yesterday was Sunday. Did you miss me? I wasn't here to cook. He said, no, Denise, that's why God invented McDonald's. But he used to run down about all this. It was hysterical. He taught, I never even would have thought of what it was like to take people's confession, or when people come to you for guidance, how you have to respond.
Yes, totally.
You must have been exhausted.
But it sounds like he balanced it with good humor.
He did. He totally did. And I loved him. And he was a wonderful, wonderful person to me, because I learned a lot of life from Father Quinn, more than I ever did from going to Catholic school or the hocus pocus that I experienced in the Catholic Church. That sounds terrible.
No,
sounds terrible. I very much believe in church and spiritualism. I'm not big on the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Just, only because I was just in Italy again. And when you see, anytime you're in Italy and you go to the Vatican, you realize they stole all that art from someone.
I know.
All the museums, though. I was just in Vienna. All of the art of the world is just stolen by people that could steal it. I know. It's crazy. All right. Okay. I want people to know, so there's going to be a part 2. So you have to hang on and come back for part 2 to listen to Pam about how she integrated cooking into her ministry, which is brilliant. And I just think when there's a will, there's a way, Pamela. Do you know what I mean? And and also some of the questions you asked yourself that you wrote in the pages for me, I think that all women should be asking themselves these questions. I have to be honest. Or if not asking the questions, taking an inventory. So we'll go into that more next. Because it's it made me think, I thought, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. So for all of you that are listening, if this is your first time, yes, I do run on this much all the time. It's not going to change. Yes, I have ADD. Thank God I have interesting guests. Cindy keeps the train on the track. Without Cindy, there would be no podcast. And we thank everyone that writes to us, sends us messages, private messages, goes to our Facebook page, Women Beyond at iCloud.com. So thank you, everyone, and see you later, Miss Pamela, for part 2.
Okay. All right.
Bye. Pam, thanks. You are fabulous.
Oh, you are too. It's amazing. It feels so good. It's like every once in a while I have to remind myself, oh, other people are going to be listening to this.
But you know what?
Like girlfriend talk.
That's their problem. That's
I know.